Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. There are a lot of fun things to talk about in the NBA right now, so I'm not going to bore you with an intro too much. Just please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Helps me out a ton. Of course, as you can probably tell by the title and thumbnail, we're going to focus on the Raptors for the most part in this video. Last time I made a video about them, I believe I titled it, "The Raptors Are Really Fun," and I talked about how they had fun young players, they had some great veterans, potentially a couple of all-stars, at least one, Nick Nurse being a great coach. I was kind of just talking about them as kind of this fun upstart team, a team that, even if they were still like a year away, which I still don't think they're necessarily a contender, but in that last video, I talked about them a lot more as a team that could push a team to like 5, 6 games, maybe even 7, if they really got the right matchup in the first round, a team that was probably going to be in the play-in tournament, and they could come out of that, and you don't want to face them as a 1 or 2 seed because they could kind of give you some trouble, give you a tougher matchup than you might want going into the second round. That was kind of the spot they were in at the point that I made that video. But now, since that time, they have gone from kind of this fun, play-in type team to a team that is legitimately terrifying for any of the top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference. If I'm one of those top 4 teams, which are the Heat, the Bucks, the Celtics, or the Sixers, I do not want to face the Raptors round 1, because with the talent that this Raptors team has, the way that they're rolling, the way that they're playing together, their coaching, they have a great combination to go ahead and upset one of those teams in the first round. They could give one of those teams hell. Even if they don't upset them, they could push any one of those teams to like a 6-7 game series if they played them really tough. The Raptors are really, really damn good, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about why. Of course, probably one of the biggest names that you've heard about this season is, of course, Scotty Barnes, making a Rookie of the Year case tonight against the Hawks in a win. He had 19 and 14. To go along with 1 assist. It's been what he's been doing all season. Great rebounding, a couple scoring explosions here and there, some decent playmaking as well, and of course his usual brand of great perimeter defense, as well as down low at times. Scotty Barnes is kind of just this like Swiss Army knife type player who fits perfectly in this scheme, almost like a Kawhi Light at times in Nick Nurse's scheme, playing that 3 alongside Pascal Siakam in the front court. And Siakam has been an all-NBA player this season with the way that he's played, especially since the All-Star break, and even before the All-Star break. He made a really good case for being an All-Star, in my opinion. He probably should have ended up on that All-Star team with the way that he was playing, but since then he has continued to get better and better, and at this point I don't think you can deny him a spot on one of those all-NBA teams. The way that he's played, the way that the Raptors are now the 5th seed rather than like a 7 or an 8 seed, they're not even that far. If there were a couple more games in the season, there's a potential that they could have caught up to some of those teams in the top 4 with the way that they've been playing. Siakam's been a monster. He's playing some of his best basketball, probably the best basketball of his career, if not just the best basketball since that 2019 run, but it's the best basketball of his career since he became kind of their franchise cornerstone when they signed him to that big max contract a few years ago. He's putting up 31, 13, and 6. He's going to be, or should at least be, on an all-NBA team. I think it would be a huge robbery if he wasn't. I know there's a lot of talent in the league, but the way that Siakam has carried this team night in, night out, or I guess maybe carried's not the word, but the way that he has been the best player, the leader of this team, great defensively, offensively, better playmaking than most people realize, a way better scorer than I think some people realize too. He's had 40-point games, 30-point games. He's susceptible to pop off for 30 or 40 on basically any given night with the way that he's been playing this season, knocking down threes, go-to moves in the paint. He's doing everything, whether it's fadeaway jumpers, attacking the basket. Siakam has been a monster this season, offensively as well as defensively. He's a guy who is a big reason why this Raptors team is so scary defensively, with his length, with his ability to either play the 4 or a lot of times a small ball center when fully healthy. He's been so versatile for them in that way. When they have OG Anunoby back, he probably slides back over to the center, creating a lineup of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, and Pascal Siakam, which should terrify any Eastern Conference team. A crazy combination of length. It feels like everyone on the floor is 6'7" or above at most times. except for, like Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr., who even out there, like their defensive length, their ability to play defensively, jump in passing lanes, it feels like they're still 6'7" with crazy wingspans out there. But I think Siakam deserves a ton of love for the way that he's played this season, more than really anyone's been giving him. So shout to Siakam. Of course, other names that I just mentioned, OG Anunoby, while he hasn't quite been having the breakout season that some people, me included, thought he could, he's still been pretty solid on the season when healthy. Gary Trent Jr. has been great, one of the leading steal getters in the NBA. He's been a guy who's been great in those passing lanes, a microwave scorer. He can go off for like 30 or 40. Like I mentioned, he's another one of those guys that on this team can kind of just go off on any given night, knock down some threes, hit some ridiculously tough baskets. Just such a great pickup for them in the Norman Powell trade. And of course, you've got Fred VanVleet, who was their lone all-star this season, lockdown defender despite being on the shorter side, even for a point guard. He makes big time shots. I believe, if I read the stat correctly, he has 19 clutch threes this season, which leads the NBA. He's just a clutch big time player, as we've seen time and time again with Fred VanVleet. He's someone who steps up in those big moments. When he gets into a playoff series, he can lock up opposing guards, give them fits. Really, this whole team can. Precious Achiuwa has played, he's been really hit or miss at times, but recently he's been playing pretty well. Chris Boucher had 18 and 7 tonight. Thaddeus Young was a really solid trade deadline pickup. And overall, this team is just super scary. The combination of length that they have, offensive firepower, they've got multiple guys that could pop off on any given night. Scotty Barnes, hell, even had a game against the Nets earlier this year where I think he had like 21 points on perfect shooting in the first half or something like that. And then you factor in the fact that they have Nick Nurse on their roster, one of the best coaches in the NBA, a guy who has a lot of success with locking up some of the best players in the East. He's had success in the past against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's had success against Joel Embiid as well. The Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat are a little bit kind of newer, although he has gone up against the Boston Celtics and played them to 7 games. So he knows these teams. He knows what teams he's going up against. And there aren't many coaches in the NBA that would rather have in a playoff series where I have to make adjustments than Nick Nurse. And going up against some of these teams with a lot of big, imposing threats on the inside without a true center, Nick Nurse is going to have to make a lot of schemes, but knowing him, he's going to come up with something that is absolutely insane. And just all of that combined, I don't want to face the Raptors if I'm one of those top 4 teams. I think they would much rather face, of course, one of the play-in teams or a team like the Chicago Bulls, who we'll talk about in a little bit, that have been kind of skidding, have been unhealthy. Lonzo Ball just got ruled out for the year. I'd much rather face them than a Toronto Raptors in the first round. So you've heard it here first. If the Raptors go ahead and upset one of those top 4 teams, don't be surprised, because the Raptors' combination of length, shot making, defense, grit, like all their they could run like a 6-man rotation out there if they wanted to, because the Raptors starters have kind of been conditioned all season to play like 40, 42 minutes if they have to. So they're not going to get worn out by their lack of depth either. I just would not want to face the Raptors if I'm one of those top teams. If they do upset someone in that first round, you heard it here first. And even then, it's probably not that much of an upset with how good this roster is. So just kind of all that to shout the Raptors, what they've been doing. It's been super impressive. If they're able to add like another star somehow, if they can even just add like a pretty solid center, I think like a Miles Turner, if they could somehow bring in like a Rudy Gobert even, they could try and make a run out in the Eastern Conference next season to try and become one of the contenders up at the top. I don't think it's that far out of the question for this Raptors team that is both young and talented in the now and in the future. Moving on from that game, I'll talk about the weird Thunder game that happened. The Thunder ran out a starting lineup of guys you've probably never heard of. I'll let you know the names. Jalen Horde, Vit Krejci, you had Isaiah Roby, Xavier Simpson, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Georgios Kalaitzakis. That's probably not right. But yeah, 2 of those guys being two-way players, Xavier Simpson and Georgios, who we signed literally today as I'm recording this video. Jalen Horde had a 24 and 21 game in 46 minutes out of 48. He played a ton of time, but the Thunder did get the win over the Portland Trail Blazers, despite starting a lineup with multiple G League guys. In fact, everyone that played tonight was in the G League at some point this season. The Blazers ran out a lineup of Chris Dunn, Keon Johnson, Drew Eubanks, Greg Brown, and CJ Ellaby. They ran a deeper rotation than the Thunder did, playing, 10 guys, 9 guys, 10 guys. The Blazers just out tanked us in this one. We were down 19 right at the end of the third quarter. Went on, I believe, like a 23-2 run in the fourth quarter to just pull out the win. The Blazers clearly did not want to win this one from the way they played in the fourth. Just really a tanking masterclass from the Blazers, so shout out to them. Moving on, the Philadelphia 76ers beat down the Pacers 131-122, with Joel Embiid putting up another MVP caliber performance, 45-13, and he just continues to make that case really tough. Tyrese Maxey had 30, including 7 threes in the first half. Harden only had 11 points, but he had 14 assists. And what's been really interesting over the course of the last few games has been to see how James Harden kind of playmakes versus scores in many of these games. He's trying to find that balance, and I think that balance is one that is super critical for him to find for this Sixers team to have success in the long term in the playoffs. And I feel like he's kind of found it. It's really is a night to night basis, because some nights he looks too passive and they need him to score. Some nights, like tonight, other guys are just completely on and he makes those necessary passes to feed Embiid. Harris had 17. Maxey had 30, like I mentioned. Shake Milton had 10. So you've got all these different guys that can score on this team. So Harden finding that balance, I think, is key. And over the last few games, I really feel like he does kind of have a better barometer of when he needs to pass versus shoot than he had in the first few games of his time here in Philly. Moving on, the San Antonio Spurs beat the Denver Nuggets 116-97. Nikola Jokic had a crazy game with 41, 17, and 4. But beyond that, Aaron Gordon had 18, and then no one else scored in double digits. Just really a lack of help for Nikola Jokic in this one. For the Spurs, they had 20 points from Keldon Johnson, 20 from Devin Vassell, a double-double, 14 and 10 assists for Trey Jones, 14 for Jakob Poeltl, 13 and 7 for Zach Collins, and 18 for Josh Richardson, in a win that puts them in the play-in tournament, pretty much solidifies it. As I started to record this video, the Lakers game wasn't over. It's probably over at this point. They were down 20 when I started recording. So at this point, assuming the Lakers didn't make a miraculous comeback against the Phoenix Suns, which I know they did not, the San Antonio Spurs are now confirmed in the play-in tournament, with the Lakers falling out of it officially. So the Lakers season is finally over, and I don't have to talk about them anymore, which is great. But shout out to the Spurs. They were a team that I didn't think was going to make it in earlier, like towards the start of the season. They really turned things around, and they're going to get a chance to try and make their way into the playoffs. Beyond them, the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Chicago Bulls. Just another game where the Bulls, like, lack of depth, or at least just healthy players, missing Lonzo Ball badly in this one, really showed. Vucevic was 3 of 19 in this one as well. They've got some problems to figure out in the offseason. It feels like a lot of their magic from earlier in the year has kind of worn off. Giannis only had to play 24 minutes, and he put up 18, 9, and 7. You had 28 from Brook Lopez, so not only did Nikola Vucevic not score the ball, but he got dominated on the inside by Brook Lopez. 11 and 13 for Jrue Holiday, and kind of just what was a big game for the Bucks, kind of showing what the contendership that they have. Beyond that, the Utah Jazz won 121-115 against the Memphis Grizzlies. In overtime, Jaren Jackson Jr. had 28 for the Grizzlies. No Ja Morant in this one again. You had 24 from Tyus Jones, 23 from Desmond Bane. Kyle Anderson only had 8 points, but he had a 2 right at the buzzer to send this one to overtime. But the Jazz did hold on in overtime, because if they didn't, I think things would have blown up in that locker room. Gobert had a 22 and 21 game, 29 and 5 for Donovan Mitchell, 22 from Jordan Clarkson, who had a really good one. Quinn Snyder at the beginning of this game kind of had this, like, kind of just sit down with reporters talking about all these, like, fake rumors, and you know, I think it went on, one of the reporters said it for like 9 minutes or so, so maybe he's kind of like leveled things out in the locker room and they're going to kind of lock in with this win, but I guess we'll see. And finally, the Miami Heat put up 144 points, which I thought was important to mention, because me and many others have expressed worries about their offense. It was not at all a problem. Jimmy Butler had 27 tonight, 22 for Bam Adebayo, 35 for Tyler Hero, 21 for Duncan Robinson, who had, I believe, 6 or 7 threes. I think it was 6 threes in the first half. It was against the Hornets, who are a terrible defense, but the Hornets did have a couple good scores of their own. 29 from Miles Bridges, 18 and 14 from LaMelo Ball, 16 from Terry Rozier. They just can't seem to stop anyone, which is going to be probably their undoing in the play-in tournament, facing off against like a Brooklyn, in Atlanta, or whoever they end up facing. It's going to be tough for that Hornets team to get stops, or even against like a Cleveland Cavaliers with like Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, if he does get healthy. We'll see. But for right now, the Hornets, it continues to become a problem where they're going to get defensive stops from, because Plumlee is not the answer. So, those are my thoughts on the games today. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the Raptors. Do you think they could upset one of those top 4 teams in the first round? Let me know in the comment section below. Once again, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you made it to this point, drop a "the Raptors are scary" in the comment section below to let me know you made it to the end. I appreciate you watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.